The power went out just as Elias Parker was trying to convince his 5-year-old daughter that peanut butter sandwiches could count as dinner again. "Daddy, it's too dark," Ava whispered, clutching her stuffed bunny tighter. "I know, sweetheart," Elias said, crouching beside her and brushing a curl from her cheek. "It's just a blackout. I've got some candles in the kitchen. We'll make it cozy like camping." But the truth was, the last thing he needed was another problem. His shifts at the auto shop had been cut back again, rent was overdue, and the sitter had quit last week. Now they were sitting in a freezing cold apartment with flickering flashlights and a fridge full of food that might go bad by morning. He wrapped Ava in a blanket and lit a candle on the counter. Just as he was about to dig through a drawer for batteries, there was a loud knock on the door. Everyone in the building pretty much kept to themselves. It wasn't that kind of neighborhood, the kind with friendly neighbors or borrowed cups of sugar. He opened the door cautiously. A woman stood there, her face barely visible in the dim hallway light, hair damp from the rain that had started minutes earlier. She looked lost. And definitely not from around here. "Hi," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm sorry, but my car died down the street. My phone's dead and I'm not from this area. I just need somewhere safe for a minute." Elias hesitated. She wore a fitted coat, soaked through, and heels that made no sense for a neighborhood like this. Her lipstick was faded, her mascara slightly smudged, but there was something about her eyes confident, even now, that made him nod. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. "Thank you," she breathed, stepping inside. "I'm Elias. That's my daughter, Ava." The woman gave them both a small nod. Tessa Vaughn." Ava waved shyly from the blanket. "Hi," Tessa smiled, her features softening. "Hi there." The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, cluttered but clean. Toys were scattered across the floor, and the only light came from 2 candles Elias had managed to find. Tessa sat on the edge of the worn couch, glancing around, her hands folded in her lap. "You want a towel or something?" Elias asked, rubbing the back of his neck. "That would be great, actually." He handed her one from the hall closet and stepped into the kitchen, opening a can of soup and heating it quietly on a gas burner. "So, car trouble?" he asked, trying to keep it casual. Tessa nodded. "Yeah, I was heading back from a work event. Took a wrong turn trying to avoid the freeway, ended up here. Then the power cut out and the car wouldn't start. Everything went wrong all at once." "Sounds about right," he said with a dry chuckle. "This area's always the first to lose power. You live here long, 5 years. Moved here after Ava was born. You raise her alone?" Tessa asked gently. He glanced over at her, gauging her tone. It didn't feel like pity, just curiosity. "Yeah, her mom left when she was 2, haven't seen her since." Tessa's expression didn't change, but her posture shifted slightly. "That must be hard." "It is, but she's my world," he smiled faintly. "Just wish I could give her more than peanut butter sandwiches and frozen pizza." Tessa looked down, fiddling with the edge of the towel. "This place feels warm. I don't mean temperature, I mean real," he shrugged. "It's not much. It's more than some people ever get." The soup was ready. He poured it into 2 mugs, his only clean ones, and offered one to her. She took it with a grateful smile. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a moment while the storm raged outside, interrupted only by Ava humming to herself on the floor, drawing stick figures on a notepad. "You don't look like you're from around here," Elias said finally. "I'm not." Her tone was guarded now. "You visiting family?" "No, just trying to get home." He didn't press. They didn't know each other anything, but something about her made him want to. She looked around again, eyes pausing on the photos pinned to the fridge. Ava in a Halloween costume, Elias holding her up beside a Christmas tree that was clearly secondhand. "You're a good dad," she said quietly. He raised an eyebrow. "You got all that from a bowl of soup." "I got that from the way you looked at her." She didn't say anything else for a while, just sat there, warming her hands on the mug, eyes flickering between the candlelight and Ava's drawings. It was almost midnight when the lights finally flickered back on. Tessa blinked against the sudden brightness. "Well," she said softly, "guess that's my cue to find a mechanic." "You sure you want to go out now? It's still pouring out there. I'll call a car." "Once I find someone who'll pick up." She stood, brushing off her coat, and Elias suddenly felt like the room had gotten colder. "Wait," he said before he could stop himself. You can stay, just for a little longer until it's safe. Tessa hesitated. He added quickly, you and I both know this area's not exactly friendly at night. You can take the spare room. Ava's already asleep in mine. She looked at him, really looked at him, then gave the smallest nod. Okay. Just until morning. He set her up in the spare bedroom, a mattress, a few extra blankets, not much. But it was warm. She paused at the doorway, holding the frame. Thank you, Elias, he met her eyes. Anytime. When he woke the next morning, the apartment smelled like fresh coffee. Tessa was in the kitchen, hair tied back, wearing one of his flannel shirts over her dress. She looked different, softer, but still somehow out of place in his world. I hope you don't mind, she said, holding out a mug. I found some in the cabinet. I don't mind, he said slowly, taking it from her. She hesitated, then smiled. You saved me last night, he raised a brow. I gave you soup and a couch. Sometimes that's all it takes. She left an hour later, after giving Ava a quick hug and Elias a strange, unreadable look. He stood at the door as she walked down the sidewalk, disappearing into a sleek black car that had definitely not come from any local tow company. He didn't know who she was, but something told him he hadn't seen the last of her. The first time Elias saw her again, it was on a Tuesday. Ava had forgotten her lunchbox again, and he'd rushed over to her school during his break, still in his grease-stained coveralls. He was stepping out of the building, adjusting the strap of his tool belt, when a black SUV pulled up to the curb across the street. The back door opened. She stepped out like she belonged to another world. Tessa Vaughn. Her hair was swept up this time, dry and styled, and her coat looked like it had never seen a drop of rain. She was talking to someone on the sidewalk, handing over a manila envelope with a calm authority that didn't match the woman who'd shown up at his apartment just days earlier, soaked and lost. She hadn't seen him yet. He could have walked away. Should have, but his feet didn't listen. Tessa, she turned. For a second, something flickered across her face, recognition, hesitation, maybe even guilt, but it was gone before he could name it. Elias, she said, crossing the street. You okay? He asked, glancing at the SUV, then back at her. Didn't expect to see you around here again. I had a meeting nearby, she said. Didn't realize I was this close to the school until I saw the sign. He looked at her carefully. You sure that's all? I wanted to see you, she admitted after a pause, her voice quieter. I wasn't sure if I should. He shifted his weight. You left without saying goodbye to Ava. I didn't think it was my place, she said. I didn't want to confuse her. She asked about you, he replied. Not a lot, just once, then she got quiet. Tessa looked down at the pavement. I didn't mean to leave like that. Then why did you? She met his eyes. Because I thought if I stayed any longer, I wouldn't leave at all. That shut him up. I wasn't lying about the car, she added, but I didn't say everything either, clearly. I want to explain. But not here. He hesitated, then nodded once. I get off at 6. There's a diner 2 blocks from my shop if you still want to talk. I'll be there, she said before he could change his mind. When she arrived that evening, the sky was painted in streaks of gold and violet, the first clear sunset in days. Elias was already at a booth near the window, nursing a cup of burnt coffee and reading over a repair invoice. He looked up as she came in. This time, she didn't look lost. She slid into the seat across from him, setting down her bag. The waitress hovered for a second, then left them alone. I work in acquisitions, she began, clasping her hands together on the table. Multinational properties, mostly. I oversee a lot of contracts, mergers. I've done well. Very well. He didn't speak. My family, she paused, then corrected herself. My father is known in the investment world. He's built entire portfolios from the ground up. I was raised in boardrooms and luxury hotels, but I left that life a year ago, started my own firm. I needed to prove I could do it without his name. Elias leaned back. So you're rich, she blinked. Yes, like rich, private jet, 5 condo portfolio and staff on call rich. Well, he said, setting down his cup, that explains the coat. She smiled faintly. I didn't lie to you, Elias. I just didn't introduce myself with a resume and a net worth. Because you didn't think I'd open the door. No, because I liked not being that person for a night. I liked being just Tessa, he studied her. And now, I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted. I've never met someone who didn't want something from me. You didn't ask for anything. You gave me soup, a towel, and a safe place to sleep. And you looked at me like I was just someone you were. She looked away, then back. I want to see you again, properly. Not because it's convenient or because I showed up on your doorstep during a blackout. He chuckled once. Well, I'm not exactly a walk in the park either. I didn't come here to be charmed. You came here in a car that probably costs more than I make in 3 years. I didn't come in the car. I came for you. That silenced him. I've dated hedge fund heirs, tech moguls, and men who think buying me a yacht makes up for not listening to a word I say, she continued. But you made me feel more seen in one night than any of them did in 5 years. He cleared his throat, suddenly aware of how loudly the clock above the counter ticked. I can't offer you much. I'm not asking for much. I've got a kid, a job that barely pays the bills, a life that's messy. I'm not afraid of messy. He folded his arms. You sure? Because this isn't a storybook. There's no champagne waiting in the fridge. You'd be picking up crayons off the floor and making dinner while I scrub oil off my hands. Tessa leaned in a little. Then let's start with dinner. He raised an eyebrow. This place, she nodded. I like it, he snorted. I think the waitress is using instant mashed potatoes. Perfect. I haven't had instant anything in years. And just like that, something loosened between them. They ordered burgers and fries, and she stole half his pickles. He told her about the time Ava tried to flush an entire roll of paper towels and flooded the bathroom. She told him about the first board meeting where a man 20 years older tried to explain to her how to read a spreadsheet. When they stepped outside, the air was cool and crisp. She walked with him to the corner where his truck was parked. It groaned when he started it. Still want that second date? He asked. I'll drive next time, she said. He looked at her, really looked at her. You're full of surprises. You haven't seen anything yet. She kissed him once, quick, bold, and without apology, then turned and walked away, heels clicking against the sidewalk. Elias sat there for a long minute, engine idling before pulling out onto the quiet street. He'd never wanted simple. But maybe, just maybe, something extraordinary had found him anyway. 2 weeks later, Elias stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of a shirt he hadn't worn since his cousin's wedding. It was a deep charcoal color, pressed that morning with the iron Ava knocked off the counter twice. His daughter had insisted he wear the grown-up watch, even though the battery had died last year. You look fancy, Ava said from the doorway, clutching her favorite book. You think so? She nodded solemnly. Are you going to see the pretty lady again? He glanced at her reflection in the mirror. Yeah, I am. Will she come here again? Maybe, but tonight I'm going to her place. Is it big? He paused. I think it might be. Tessa had sent a driver, a man with sharp eyes and a navy suit, who addressed Elias as Mr. Parker and opened the car door like they were heading to a red carpet. The vehicle itself was so silent and smooth that Elias kept checking to make sure it was actually moving. When they pulled up, he didn't need directions. The building's glass exterior shimmered under the downtown lights, and the doorman greeted him like he'd been expected all evening. The elevator ride was silent but fast, stopping at the top floor. When the doors opened, he stepped into a different world. Tessa was waiting barefoot in a pale silk blouse and black trousers, hair down and tucked behind one ear. A jazz record played softly in the background, the scent of citrus and something floral lingering in the air. You came, she said. I didn't think I could say no after your guy opened the car door like I was royalty, Elias replied, stepping in. I wanted to do something different tonight. No restaurants, just dinner here. You cooked. I ordered from a chef who came here and cooked. Does that count? He laughed. I guess that counts. She led him through the open-plan living space, wide windows offering a view of the entire skyline. Everything was sleek, modern, and minimal in a way that reminded him of expensive magazines he used to flip through at waiting rooms. There was no clutter, no toys underfoot, no folded laundry on the couch. This place doesn't look lived in, he said. It isn't, she replied. I bought it a year ago and never made time to settle in. Too many flights, too many meetings. I sleep here when I'm not in London or Zurich or catching a red-eye to Dubai. He turned to her. Is that your life? Airports and towers like this. Until now. Why now? Because you reminded me what it feels like to be still. They sat at a marble table set with gold-rimmed plates and wine he couldn't pronounce. The food was delicate and plated like art. Elias ate slowly, careful not to spill anything on the tablecloth that probably cost more than his rent. "You're quiet," she said, watching him. "I'm trying not to break anything. You won't. You say that, but this knife weighs less than a screwdriver and I don't trust it," she laughed, leaning back in her chair. "I like that you're not impressed." "I didn't say I wasn't impressed," he glanced around. "You've got a view of the whole city, but it feels like no one lives here." "That's because no one has until now." He set his fork down. "You brought me here for a reason." "I did. And you're not the type to make the same move twice." She studied him carefully. "I want to ask you something, but I don't want you to think it's a test." "Okay, I have to go to Milan in 4 days. It's a short trip, 3 days, tops. I want you to come with me." He blinked. "Milan? There's a property I'm finalizing, but I'll be free most of the time." "I thought we could make it a mix of business and whatever this is." He sat back, jaw tight. "I can't just leave. I've got Ava, I've got work." "I know. That's why I've already called 2 local agencies. I found a credentialed sitter who's worked with single-parent households. She'd stay at your place, background checked, certified. I wouldn't ask if I hadn't already thought it through. You arranged all that before asking me?" "Yes. I don't know if that's impressive or terrifying. I wasn't trying to control anything. I was trying to make it possible." He rubbed his hands together, staring at the polished surface of the table. "You're used to people being able to drop everything and follow you halfway around the world. That's not what I'm asking." "Then what are you asking?" "I'm asking if you want to see what this could be outside of candlelight and burgers. I want to see who you are in a place where nothing reminds you of what you worry about every day." He was quiet for a long moment. "I've never been on a plane," he finally said, "and I've never been away from Ava for more than 1 night. We'll take the jet. And you can call her anytime." He looked at her. "You have a jet?" "Yes," he exhaled slowly. "This is insane." "Maybe, but so was you letting me into your apartment that night." He stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. The city looked smaller from up here, distant. Like nothing could touch them. "I don't belong in your world," he said. She walked up behind him. "Then maybe we make a new one." He turned to her. "Why me?" "Because you're the only person I've met in a decade who didn't try to impress me, who didn't try to fix me, who didn't care what I could offer." He brushed a hand along the window pane. "I've never even seen the ocean." "Then let's start with Italy." He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in years, something inside him cracked open, letting in the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to be defined by what he couldn't give. "I'll talk to Ava," he said. "If she's okay with it, I'll come." Tessa nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Good, but don't expect me to wear a tie. Wouldn't dream of it." He walked back to the table, picked up the wineglass and raised it, "To things that don't make any sense." She clinked hers against his. "And to the ones that change everything anyway." The cobblestone beneath Elias's boots was still damp with morning rain as he stepped onto Milanese soil for the first time in his life. He'd barely slept on the flight, his body buzzing with nerves, his thoughts tangled with Ava's hug goodbye and the quiet nod she'd given when he asked if she'd be okay for a few days. The sitter, a kind, gray-haired woman named Marta, had arrived with a binder thicker than a phone book and a calm that reassured him more than any background check ever could. Now, here he was, standing in front of a villa that looked like it had been pulled out of a movie. Ivy curled up the pale stone walls and lemon trees in terracotta pots lined the terrace. Tessa stood at the top of the steps, wind lifting the hem of her cream-colored dress ever so slightly. "How do you feel?" she asked as he reached her. "Like I should have shaved," he said, brushing a hand along his jaw. "Well, Milan loves rugged. I'm not sure Milan's ready for me." She tilted her head. "You ready for Milan?" He glanced at the sweeping view behind her. "Not remotely." They spent the morning walking through the Brera district, where Tessa guided him through narrow alleyways lined with boutiques and art galleries. She didn't rush, didn't try to impress him with her fluency in Italian or the fact that half the shopkeepers seemed to know her by name. She just let him take it in. At one point, she stopped in front of a window display. Inside was a leather jacket. Not flashy, not loud, but it was hand-stitched, clean-lined, and dark slate in color. "You like it?" she asked. "I'd never wear something like that back home." "But you're not home." He glanced at the tag. The number made his chest tighten. "I can't let you buy me that." "I didn't ask to. I'm serious, so am I," she said. "Let me do something for you for once." He hesitated, then nodded once. Later, they rode to her meeting in a car so quiet, he kept checking the streets to see if they'd been cleared just for them. While she stepped inside the marble building, he waited at a café across the street, sipping espresso that came in a cup smaller than his palm. A waiter brought him a newspaper without asking, and he spent half an hour circling words he didn't understand. When she returned, something in her was different. Lighter. "Everything okay?" he asked as she slid into the seat across from him. "It is now," she said. "That was the last piece. It's done. The deal, the whole thing. I handed over the reins today. I'm no longer CEO." He stared at her. "What do you mean, I sold the firm? You what?" "I've been thinking about it for months. And somewhere between your kitchen and here, I realized I didn't want to keep chasing things that don't make me feel alive anymore." He leaned back. "You're serious?" "I'm tired of boardrooms. Tired of press releases and people who only call when they want a favor. I want something real. And you think that's me?" "I know it is." He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "That's a lot to give up." "So was your pride when you let me buy you a jacket." He gave a short laugh. "Touché." That night they didn't go out. They stayed at the villa. Tessa cooked badly and Elias took over halfway through, teasing her about nearly burning water. They ate on the balcony, feet bare, lights from the city glowing in the distance. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" he asked, watching her over the rim of his glass. "I used to," she said. "But now I think about what feels right. And this feels right." She reached across the table, brushing her thumb over his hand. "It does," he nodded slowly. "Ava's everything to me, I know. This won't work if she's not part of it. She already is." The next morning they flew back. The jet cut through clouds as the sun rose behind them, casting golden light across the cabin. Tessa leaned against his shoulder, eyes closed. Elias looked out the window, heart heavier than he expected. At the airport, Ava ran into his arms the moment she saw him. Marta smiled from behind, handing over a list of notes and a wrapped drawing. "I missed you, Daddy," Ava whispered. "I missed you more." Tessa crouched beside them, unsure. Ava looked at her, then held out the drawing. "I made you this." Tessa unfolded it. Crayon lines formed a house, 3 stick figures, and a sun with a smiley face. "That's you," Ava said, pointing to the tallest figure beside Elias. Tessa's voice caught. "Thank you." That night, they all had dinner at Elias's apartment. Tessa didn't flinch when the faucet leaked or when the power flickered again. She just lit a candle and kept eating. A week later, Elias came home to find Tessa and Ava baking something that looked like it might never be edible. Flour was everywhere. Laughter echoed in the kitchen. He watched them for a moment, something tightening in his chest. Later, when Ava was asleep and the apartment was quiet, he pulled Tessa onto the fire escape, the city stretching out below them. "You're really staying?" he asked. She nodded. "I bought the empty building across the street. Thinking of turning it into something the neighborhood can use. A café, maybe, with a reading space. You're not running anymore. Neither are you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. She froze. "It's not a ring," he said. "Not yet," she laughed, breathless with relief and something else. He opened it. Inside was a key, his spare. "I want you in this life," he said. "All of it. The mess, the mornings, the tantrums, the peace. I want you here." She took the key and closed her hand around it. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." He kissed her, and for the first time it wasn't about escape or fantasy. It was home. Elias stepped into the building across from his apartment, the one with the boarded-up windows and rusted lettering that had hung crooked for years. But the boards were gone now. The glass was clean, the doors freshly painted, and the scent of sawdust and new beginnings filled the air. Inside, Tessa stood in front of a long wooden counter that hadn't been there a week ago. Her sleeves rolled up as she reviewed a delivery sheet with a contractor. "Did those shelves come in?" she asked without looking up. "They did," Elias replied, walking toward her. "And I carried all 6 crates in myself, so I expect at least 3 cookies in return." She turned, her expression easing into something warm and familiar. "Then you're in luck." Ava and I baked 4 trays. Please tell me she didn't try to add glitter again. She only added it to one. I think she's calling them wishing cookies now. He laughed under his breath, leaning on the counter. This place is coming together fast. That's because I've never been this sure of anything, she said. We're calling it Olive and Oak. A café, a little library space in the back, and a community room for workshops. Ava wants to host a drawing club. She'll need help cleaning up the glitter. I already made a glitter ban. She tried to negotiate. Of course she did. Tessa reached into a box and pulled out a carved wooden sign with the new name etched in soft script. I want this to be more than a business. I want it to belong to the neighborhood. Elias nodded, running a hand along the edge of the counter. You're building something real here. I'm building it with you, she said quietly. Before he could answer, the bell above the door jingled. Ava burst in with her backpack swinging and her cheeks flushed from the cold, Marta trailing behind her with a knit scarf in hand. I beat you here, Ava declared triumphantly. You had a 5-minute head start, Elias said, scooping her up. Did you finish your reading? 3 chapters. And I drew a map of a magical island in the margins. She's been asking if she can hang it in the back room, Marta added. We'll frame it, Tessa said. Only the finest art gets wall space. Ava beamed and darted toward the back, already pulling out her markers. After Marta left, Elias joined Tessa at the window, watching as a few curious neighbors slowed their steps to look inside. I've been thinking, he said. Tessa raised an eyebrow. That always means trouble. Not this time, he said, turning toward her. I want to make this official. You mean I mean us. You and me, I want to marry you, she blinked, her breath catching. You're serious. I've never been more sure of anything, not because you've got a jet or a building, but because I wake up every morning thinking about you. Because Ava already sees you as part of our family, because I don't want to face a single day without knowing you're mine. Tessa's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Yes, of course it's yes. I don't have a ring, he said. I wanted to ask first. I wanted it to be right. You could have proposed with a bottle cap and I'd still say yes. He pulled her close, his hand steady on her waist, and kissed her like they had all the time in the world to get it right. They married in the courtyard behind Olive and Oak in the spring. Ava wore a crown of wildflowers, scattering petals in front of them with joyous abandon. Tessa's dress was simple and soft, hugging her figure in all the right places without a trace of glitter. Elias wore a dark vest and rolled sleeves, his hand never leaving hers. They didn't rent a ballroom or arrive in a limousine. They served homemade pastries and fresh lemonade. The neighborhood turned out in full. Kids ran between tables, music played from a speaker tucked behind the terrace, and someone's grandmother brought a tray of cannoli that vanished in 10 minutes. Tessa's father didn't attend. He sent a letter instead, short, respectful, and distant. Tessa didn't cry over it. She had everything she needed right there. After the vows, Elias lifted Ava up onto his shoulders and she shouted, "Now I have 2 grown-ups who love me forever," and everyone clapped because they did, years passed. The café thrived. Locals came for the coffee, stayed for the book readings, and returned for the warmth that lived in every inch of the space. Tessa ran the business with precision and heart. Elias built a small workshop in the back, repairing furniture and teaching weekend classes in woodworking. Ava grew taller, louder, and more curious by the day. She started a drawing club, just like she'd wanted, and spent weekends reorganizing the children's book section by her own mysterious system. Their home was still the same apartment, though it had been repainted and filled with little touches that belonged to all 3 of them. A lavender throw on the couch, a shelf of mismatched mugs, a photo wall that grew every month. They traveled sometimes to places Elias had never dreamed of. But they always came home. One summer evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline and the café closed for the night, Elias stood behind the counter wiping down the surface while Tessa locked up. Ava sat in the corner, sketching characters for a comic book she was planning to write. Tessa came up beside him and leaned her head on his shoulder. Do you ever miss what it was like before? He looked around at the quiet, golden space. No, he said. Not for a second. Me neither. He turned, kissed her temple, and whispered against her skin, You changed everything. She smiled, eyes closing. So did you. And with the lights low, the shop still, and their daughter humming softly in the background, they stood together in the heart of the world they built, full of love, full of peace, exactly where they were meant to be.